Shavasti, I have realized that a lot of people want to go on their healing journey by avoiding pain. Is that possible?
Well, the short answer to that is no, not unless you are engaging in bypassing, which then tends to produce something that's very, very inauthentic. I'm, I'm sure many people have heard the expression toxic positivity, and we all know that when we're around people like that who have no capacity to be around something that feels heavier, that feels denser, that feels, in their words, negative. And so a lot of feelings get labeled as being negative feelings. My own experience is that the only way to heal something is to move right through the center of it, right through the middle of it. And so, to a certain degree, even when we're healing trauma, we have to re-experience that trauma, which is different to being re-traumatized by an inept therapist or by somebody who lacks skill, where there's been too much push involved. So for me, it's really about sitting with what is. And what is at the moment could be an emotion like anger, for example. Well, what is behind the anger? What is underneath the anger? And what I've observed over the years is that a very close friend of anger is grief. You see, our whole society is structured around the avoidance of pain. Mm-hmm. It's buy this thing, smoke this thing, eat this thing, have this new thing. So the acquisition of objects, things to distract us, anything to avoid what is really, really, really present. And so, and we've all been through this major experience in the past few years in terms of the COVID pandemic. That brought up a lot of anxiety for people, mostly the anxiety with the absolute knowledge that we are very mortal beings, that the life that we lead is in reality quite fragile, that we could die at any moment. There could be a war that suddenly breaks out, there could be an earthquake, there could be a hurricane, there could be some natural disaster or some illness that comes along out of the blue. Mm-hmm. And so these reminders that we are very mortal brings up a lot of anxiety for people. And with anxiety often comes anger as well. Anger at the sense that we are so powerless against many forces that are greater than ourselves. So back to the question on healing. If we only want to reach for the positive feelings, then what we tend to do is to create something that's very inauthentic. So we create a love mask, we can create a peace and serenity mask, and that's what we present to the world. So everything is good and everything is wonderful. And one of the things that I say to people is, if you never experience any grief, then you're not paying any attention. And I seriously mean that. There are things to grieve at. Mm-hmm. Small things, large things. And so uncomfortable feelings, or feelings that generally make us feel uncomfortable, is what also makes us human. It is sad. It is deeply, deeply, deeply sad when a child dies, for example. Mm-hmm. And so in the moment of making this video, we have wars going on in Ukraine, we have a war going on in Israel at this moment. These are deeply and profoundly sad things, because real human beings are suffering, and real human beings are dying and are being killed, and as we know, a part of war is women being raped. Rape is a weapon of war, and that's been used for centuries. And these are tragically sad things. And so there's no way to use positive thinking or positive feeling to bypass any of this. We have to look at what is, and that's what makes us human. And so the healing path also brings us into contact with our humanity. And when we're in contact with our humanity, that brings us into contact with compassion, what it is to walk compassionately upon the earth. And that is part of the healing process. You see, I'm not one of these people, as much as I've been involved in healing work for 30 years, that believes that healing provides this solution that eventually we'll never feel any pain at all, that eventually our path will be absolutely complete and we never have to go there again. That simply doesn't exist. And that's one of the illusions that people buy into. It's not that 40 years later we're still going to be processing what happened in our early childhood, although for some people that might still be true. Depends on the type of childhood that they had. But our relationship to our wound changes and it matures over time. Mhm. And so it can change from being the worst thing that ever happened to us to becoming a companion that teaches us to walk gently through the earth, to treat other people with respect, to look at a more complete story when we meet somebody, not just what's being presented to us, but looking at the possibilities of what has brought this person to this place and in this moment. And so our wound becomes our teacher and it becomes our companion. So I have lots of people who walk into my healing room and they identify the problem and they literally use the word, and I want to get rid of it. And so my philosophy is around changing our relationship to it. Mhm. And so is my relationship going to be one of, I'm only the victim and this only has a negative influence on my life? Or I was a victim and I accept that I was a victim and this did happen to me. What part can this now play in creating my destiny? Because fate is something that was given to us, it was something that happened to us that we had no control over. So we were born to a certain family, and so that's our fate. But it's what we do with all of that material that then starts to carve and create our destiny, carve and create the future that we want. And so do we want to be people who are totally cut off from our negative, so-called negative feelings? Or do we want to be people who have an open and honest relationship with that ails us, that which weighs us down? Because when we have that open and honest relationship with that is a source of pain for us, that makes us more compassionate towards other people. So then our net contribution to the earth is more compassion, more love, more understanding, and more being at one with others. And I hesitate to use that because there's this sort of teaching about us all being one, and I really actually believe that. But oneness is not saying you need to feel exactly as I feel. Mhm. Oneness is really around, I recognize what's inside you because there's a part of me that's had that experience. There's a part of me that recognizes that feeling within me. And so in that moment, I can feel that connection and oneness with you. So it's not about us becoming the same. It's about the ability to stand in the other person's shoes and recognize where they are. And sometimes people come to us with stories that we can't relate to. But because of our own personal experience and because we're in contact with our own wounds and we've explored them and we've journeyed through the middle of them, then we're able to place ourselves in the other person's shoes as if that happened to us and ask ourselves, well, how would that be for me? Mm-hmm. And so that's how we heal the world. We heal the world through these movements of compassion. I think it's very easy in the world that we live in to avoid our pain forever. We can smoke a cigarette, we can eat another piece of chocolate cake, we can watch some pornography, we can go out and get drunk, we can be playing with our apps all night on our phones, we can be sat in front of the TV, we can hypnotize ourselves out of contact with the world through all of the diversions that are around us. And so each human being walking this world can have a form of addiction. And it's around asking ourselves, Am I trying to distract myself from what's really going on? Sometimes that is necessary. Sometimes that is necessary. Um, so we can be the person that really absorbs everything that's going on in the world and be so distracted by that. So watching news 24 hours a day, etc., and really getting involved in every detail of what's happening with the world. And so be really caught in this very narrow view of how bad the world is. That's one side of the extreme. Or the other side, be completely disconnected and only allow that which feels good or that which is positive into our lives. And I think as human beings we need to be balanced.